on economic performance in 2016 reveals that more than 55% of the youths are either unemployed or underemployed.
The solutions in terms of getting them started on a business is sometimes so overwhelming, and we try as much as possible to find organizations that are working and creating hands-on solutions.
Entrepreneurship is one of the solutions to reducing poverty, as it is a medium to improve the quality of life for individuals, families, and communities, and also sustain a healthy economy and environment. During this period, 84 female entrepreneurs in Lagos State and 2,000 secondary school students in Ogun and Oyo states have gone through a rigorous entrepreneurial training. Olatunji Olamilekan is a young man who is redirecting his vision. He grew up in the Olaleye community, it's another rural and underserved area of Lagos State. Raised alongside his younger sisters, Olatunji's mother took ill in 1999 and later died.
The promise I made to my mom, I just have to keep going. And the only thing that always kept me back to the track then is this education of the thing, like, this is my agreement with my mom. That was a dying wish.
Olatunji surmounted serious hardships, but still found himself at the crossroad of unemployment.
So now I actually went to the school and nothing is still happening. So, that was what actually kept me moving ever since. That was that one goal that actually went there. Now I've obtained the goals, then what else?
With some of his friends dead or unaccounted for, he needed to toe the straight and narrow, and the vocational skill acquisition project of Freedom Foundation, supported by ACT Foundation, presented the needed opportunity.
I saw them pass by in the, like a rally, so they give me a flyer, and I read the flyer and I say like, okay, skill acquisition stuff, and I had to call one of them and say, please come. Are you sure this is free? And they say, yeah, of course it is. Like, we're not paying for it.
I see him as someone who will grow in it. I see him as someone that is patient, someone that has focus. So that's why I decided to retain him. It's going to be useful for me.
The grant has really helped us a lot because we've been able to reach out to over 500 people in communities in Surulere and Etiosa local government. And also we've heard so many interesting stories from people who were orphans, people who didn't have any means of livelihood, and they've been able to be empowered through this program. And some of them have gone on to start their own businesses, and some of them are now working and they're earning a living.
We're teaching hands-on enterprise, but also in terms of capacity building. So if you start a business, you can actually take it to the next level.
Through ACT Foundation's entrepreneurship, 138 youths have received skills acquisition training, business management training for 60 budding entrepreneurs, employability training for 293 out-of-school youths in Yaba local government area, Lagos State. Henry Anumudo was a communication and media liaison officer at a media organization in the capital city of Abuja. Henry left his media career and applied for the Teach for Nigeria Fellowship in 2017.
I saw firsthand the crisis of education in Nigeria, and I was personally challenged to come into the system and try to see what good I can do.
After going through a 6-week training where he learned teaching techniques and aids which would ensure children got maximum benefits from classroom learning, Henry was posted to Ebenezer Primary School in Abeokuta, where he teaches primary 5 pupils.
Being in the classroom has given me certain skills that are important for leadership: listening, patience, communication, being able to work under certain kind of pressures, to be able to also, with my co-teachers, being able to create a working relationship with them, it's important because it can define your impact on the pupils. And that has also made me to be able to, work with others.
It was the one that made us to have press club in the school, which we have started today, and I was impressed during the assembly. He coordinated it, he explained, and the pupils per se, they are the one that read the news.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, said that we should not use plastic bag, but we should use paper bag to manage our waste.
The best definition for me for leadership is the person who decides or does the right thing at the right time. If you have that kind of person in such a system, whatever the inequity is or the challenge is, they will definitely solve that problem. So the best way we have thought about addressing or meeting our vision someday is placing the right leaders in the classroom. And that's the summary of what the whole fellowship is all about.
What you see that they've done, you can't really talk about the solutions for the next few years. It's very long term. But they were also using the younger generation to go back into the schools to do something that changes the life and the value system of the kids.
Doyisola Ogunye is a thoroughbred professional. As CEO of Medic, she is the driving force behind the Kids for Clean Seas initiative to schools in the Etiosa local government area axis.
We started the Kids for Clean Seas because we decided to take it back to the grassroots and to the children. We took the project Kids for Clean Seas to 16 schools across Etiosa, and we're letting them know that if you clean your environment, your immediate environment, you're actually making the oceans cleaner, because every litter that is dropped on the floor usually gets into the canals, and from the canals it finds its way to the waterways, and from the waterways it gets into the ocean. What happens after that is the fish we eat this plastic and gets into our own digestive system and into our bloodstream as well, causing a lot of illnesses that we don't even know about yet. So the most important thing is to nip it in the bud and let the children understand the importance of recycling, the importance of keeping their environment clean, and overall the importance of saving the planet from plastic pollution.
Okay, good morning, everyone. You're welcome to ACT Foundation first training of the year titled Effective Program Designs for Non-Profits. You're welcome. We're so glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us. All right. It's great to see your lovely faces. I hope you will learn the very best on how to design programs that will create and make impact for you. All right. To start the session, so before we start in improper, I'll just take us through some few ground rules that will ensure that the training session goes on effectively. Okay, please kindly confirm you can see my screen. All right. Okay, as we are aware, I would like to encourage us to ensure that we keep our microphones muted so that we can hear each other clearly and audibly. Please kindly ensure when you're not speaking, please ensure you mute your microphone so that it also help us reduce background noises. All right. From time to time, the facilitators would encourage us to put on our cameras. We would love to see the beautiful faces beyond in this room with us. All right. Next, also, by the time the facilitators come in, we encourage that you use the raise hand feature when you have questions. There will be time for questions. Our facilitators are geared up and ready to ensure that they attend to every questions you have. Please ensure you use the raise hand feature, and you'll be called on. You unmute yourself to answer, ask any questions or any clarification that you need during the presentation. Also, Please kindly note that we will have polls, questions that will run in through the sessions. Please, we crave your indulgence that you please ensure that you answer those polls. And finally, please ensure that to get the best out of this training, please ensure that you don't multitask. I know it's sometimes when it's virtual, it's not easy not to multitask, but we crave your indulgence for you not to multitask, so that you can get the best out of this session. And finally, we encourage you to take note. It's very important. I know that the maximum attention span of a human can be, I think, maybe for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So it's good when you take notes, you remember more. When you write, you remember more. At least I know that works for me effectively. When you take notes, you remember more effectively. Please note also, this session is available on our YouTube channel. So in case you have someone, your colleague who did not register for it, this session is available on YouTube. You can just go to Act Foundation, just click Act Foundation on YouTube, and you will see that the session is running live. It's available for anybody who has not registered to go onto our YouTube to learn. All right, to take us on to the next session, I would like our CEO, our Chief Executive Officer, Osai Alili, to give us a welcome. Ma, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? I'm really excited that we are here for our very first one today. And we're looking forward to having everyone here, but also for all of us learning together. I know they're going to speak about who Acts Foundation is, what we do. So I'll leave that to the team. But I mean, 2024, we see what's going on around the world. So we are hoping that we skill ourselves with tool, so we can be ready and we can accomplish all our goals before the end of the year. So welcome, and looking forward to having everyone, not only on this particular training, but on the ones to come. So enjoy the rest of the day.
All right. Thank you very much, ma'am, for that welcome. We appreciate you. All right. So to take us to the next thing on our agenda, please, I would just like kindly use the chat room. I'd like to know where you are joining from. Please kindly put in the chat room, where are you joining us from? I know some people are joining from Lagos, some people are joining from Kaduna. Okay, yeah, I can see from Port Harcourt. Thank you. Great. From Lagos, from Fatima from Abuja, Samson from Abuja. Yes, thank you very much. You're welcome. From Abeokuta. Wow, great. From Oyo State. Wow, thank you all very much for joining us at this time. We appreciate. I hope you learn the very best on effective program design. All right, so I would just like us to just take a few polls just to know what your expectations are. Okay, for this session. Okay, Samuel, can you help me pull up the poll, please? Okay, all right, while the poll is coming up, all right, I would like to know can you put in the chat room, what are your expectations for the session this morning? What are your expectations for the session this morning? Please use the chat room. What do you hope to learn? What do you hope to learn? I would like to see in the chat room, kindly put it in. What do you hope to learn from this session? I know we all came in with a lot of things to learn. What would you like? What are you expecting to learn?
So if you get stuff for children, usually sends to Sierra Foundation.
All right, if you are waiting, I'd like to see your expectations for the session. Okay, why we are doing that? Okay, I would like, okay, effective program design for sustainable projects. All right, thank you very much. Okay, I hope to learn how to design, develop, and plan sustainable programs. Definitely, our pastors are ready to give training on that, to tell you how to plan sustainable programs the last. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. We'll take the poll later on, but take us to the next session. To just talk about ACT Foundation, our senior program executive Abiodun Owo.
Okay, please confirm that you can see my screen. Can you see my screen,
Would you
please?
kindly stop that? There's a video background. There's an audio background, rather.
Okay, please confirm that you can see my screen, and then we can go on.
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Good morning again, everyone. My name is Abiodun Owo, as introduced. I'm the Senior Programs Executive at ACT Foundation. So in the next few minutes, I'll be taking us through who we are at Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. And yes, we are a grant-making organization established not too long ago, 2016. And why are we here? We are here to support non-profits and social enterprises, both local, national, and also in other regions of Africa, who are working to address challenges and related vulnerabilities across Africa. We started operating in 2017, and we have come this far. Our vision at ACT Foundation is to leverage relationships to create effective social impact solutions across Africa. You know what they say about if you want to go far and if you want to go fast. You know, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you really want to go far, then you need to partner with other people. And we take relationships very, very dear at ACT Foundation. Our mission is to build sustainable society by engaging initiatives that unleash potential and empower beneficiaries. So all of the interventions, all of the initiatives that our partners carry out at the end of the day is to empower the beneficiaries to do better than they are doing currently. Our core values at ACT Foundation are very simple. Partnership, we are totally big on partnership. Excellence, we do not trade excellence for anything else. Accountability, we always hold ourselves accountable for the relationships that we have, the funds that we hold, and how we spend them, and even how we operate. And then we are always impact-driven. Everything that we do, the long and short of it, at the end of the day, we want to see that it has maximum impact on the expected beneficiaries. So at ACT Foundation, we work in 4 major areas, and that will be health, entrepreneurship, environment, and leaderships. So what that means is the support that we provide them in these 4 areas. And in health, we know that there is a whole lot of issues. There are a whole lot of challenges that we're facing in Africa. So in health, at the moment, we work in the area of malaria intervention, cancer, maternal and child health, as well as other non-communicable diseases. In the area of entrepreneurship, we work in vocational skills development and financial literacy and inclusion. For environment, we work on sustainable waste management and water and sanitation. And lastly, for leadership, we work in leadership development and thought leadership. At ACT Foundation, we are always mindful of the fact that whatever we do, we should tie it to the SDGs, the 17 goals. So what we do at Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation, whether in health, in education, in environment, in entrepreneurship or leadership, we ensure that they are tied directly or indirectly to the Sustainable Development Goals at the end of the day. This is just to show you that from 2017, we started opening our grant application every 3rd quarter of the year. And we started with just about 300 in 2017, and we have moved to receiving over 1,800 applications in the last year. So in 2023, last year, we had over 1,800 applications coming in from different parts of the continent, and they had brilliant ideas. And we're taking the process forward. So if you'd like to be part of the next grant cycle, please stay in touch with us. Follow us on our social media handles, and you'll get the information. So at ACT Foundation, we do not just stop at providing funds for our partners. We do a lot more because we know that there is need for continuous, there is need for progressive improvement of our partners. So we provide capacity building sessions. One of it is the one you're attending now, and we've done over 30 of that over the years. We also carry out research, because what we do, we gather a lot of information, we gather a lot of data. And what is data if it is not put into use? So we do research work and provide reports on what we have done. And so if you go to our website, for example, you'll find out the different research products that we've done. The last one we did was on mainstreaming gender into the programming for non-profits. Also, we also have our podcast, which is Act4, that started sometime in 2022, and we have produced 19 episodes of that. We've seen the likes of the CEO and MD of Aliko Dangote Foundation. We've had African Philanthropy Foundation come on to be our guest, and a couple of others. Also, some of our grantees who are doing really great work have been interviewed on that podcast. If you'd like to see our edition, we'll drop the link in the chat room for you to follow the podcast. It's also available on YouTube, and it's available on your regular platforms, Spotify, Google platform, Apple Podcast, and so on. We usually have our signature conference every year known as Breakfast Dialogue. It brings together stakeholders to come discuss the things that are happening in Africa and the way forward to improving and developing our continent. And through our conferences, we have reached over 5,000 people. And through our other special project, which also encourages the use of technology, we call it Changemakers Innovation Challenge. We have also funded 17 partners who have carried out technology-based projects in different parts of Africa. So this is to give you a snapshot of what our impact has been so far in the past 7 years. We have reached over 2.9 million people, and we're still counting. We have worked so far with 98 non-profit organizations, and we are present in 1,200 African communities. We've been to all of the 36 states in Nigeria, and now we have presence in 12 countries in Africa, and we hope to continue to spread our tentacles. So this is just a few pictures of some of the interventions that our partners have gone out to carry out. This is just to show you a few of them. And yes, finally, you can connect with us on YouTube, on Facebook, via LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter, or just go to our website. Okay, so next, let's go straight to why we are here. So we are here to discuss effective program design for nonprofits. A lot of us come up with passion, we have initiative, we think about things that we want to do, but then we need to understand how exactly to do this so that we can be more effective, in our interventions, we are more sustainable. And that is why we have brought up not just one, but two seasoned experts to come and speak with us today on effective program design. And right now, I'll be bringing up our very first presenter, who is Ugochukwu Umosu. He's currently the head of programs and grants here at Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. He's got over 2 decades of experience fostering growth and regional engagement in Africa, and he's worked with the likes of Rockefeller Foundation, Microsoft, and the like. So you know that you're really, really in good hands. And I must tell you that Ugo has with him impressive educational background and, of course, a wealth of experience. So as we go ahead, please ensure that you have your notes with you and take notes. We'll also have time for questions later. If you have friends who need to join, please share the link with them so that they can still join the session. All right, so I will get out of your hair and hand over to our next speaker, Ugochukwu. Are you ready? Please welcome Ugochukwu with a clap ovation. Okay.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me. Can you please confirm?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Oh, thank you for this opportunity. And I'm going to spend the next 40 minutes trying to walk us through a very simple, non-complicated way of trying to understand program design, and not just understanding it, but actually to be able to practice. So I'll just ask you to maybe put down your questions if you have any, I'm not sure if you can stop me on the way, but if you can, just put down your questions and then we'll take them during the Q&A. So first thing to consider is that whatever we are doing as an organization, here we're talking about sustainability, whatever we're doing, we're trying to be able to ensure that one, we continue, two, that we're able to feed ourselves out of what we do, and three, that we're happy doing that. And for you to be able to do this, you have to make sure that the money keeps flowing. So in most cases, when we try to create programs or designs, we are not considering that critical element of how is this going to be taken care of, who is paying, how am I going to make sure that everybody gets value, right? The first thing that comes to mind most times is the idea. It's a beautiful idea, right? Does it light the bulb? Does that idea make you want to get a whole lot more excited? But it's not also just about being excited. It's also about what is the story that led to this idea. You need to basically have a very good backstory. I mean, this is when you're developing idea. Now, for some of us, a community, people are not able to reach clean water. Maybe people have encountered domestic violence, maternal mortality, and all of these things. I mean, yeah, these are good ideas, right? But how do you now make sure that your intervention and idea gets to the point where somebody is saying, take this money, do X, Y, Z with it, or take this money and scale? The first thing you want to understand is, what do I want to do with this idea, right? So on this next slide, the key things we're looking at learning today is, number one, we want to look at some definitions, right? You want to understand what exactly is a project, right? What is a program? What happens to be an initiative, and then the motive behind all of this. We're also going to look at the various buckets of program design and implementation. We'll look at people's responsibilities. We'll look at your log frame. We will also look at, importantly, how to engage your stakeholders. I mean, most of your programs will revolve around the stakeholders. And at this point, can we please pop up the first poll on, let's pop up the first poll on what is important for fundraising.
Ugo.
Yes.
It's up.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we basically want you to answer like the first poll. We can look at the second one later on. And the first one, we just want to know, what do you think is the most important ingredient in trying to raise funds? Okay, let's see if we can get the feedback as people are running the polls. I understand that people who are not, if you are on YouTube, please, maybe you can type in the response in the chat section. Okay, are we done? Can we see the responses? Okay. Hi, Temitope. Can you give us the one with the highest tally so that we can know what our audience thinks?
Okay, so the first one, a good proposal writer, we have 2% who responded to that. For strong operational systems, we have 39% who answered to that. So our highest is strong operational systems.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Temitope. Okay, so there goes what our challenge is. The correct answer to that is actually none of the above, right? You cannot build systems for what you don't have. You cannot also get someone to write a proposal for something you have not built. If we will talk about sustainability, we need to start from increasing what we already have. Now, in the next slides, we're going to look at how, as an organization, you can actually design a program. And the goal of this today is to see if you can get your organization to a point where it is not call for proposals that make you sustainable, but it is because of the impact you have and the fact that people see what you do and they come and say, hey, we want to work with you. That is when you know you have arrived in the utopia of program design and sustainability, right? If you still have to always apply for proposals 100% of the time, then you are just 1 year away of not having any funds, right? So that's why the right answer there is that it's actually none of the above, because the most important thing in fundraising is to have content, right? Do you have a functional program? Do you have an impactful program? Do you have an idea that gets people excited? And every other thing can be worked out. Okay. So let's look at a couple of definitions, right? So projects are made up of activities that give single results, okay? And most projects flow into programs, right? Now, programs are more like intermediaries. Sometimes it looks like they are the end, but most programs are usually part of a larger initiative. Okay, so initiatives are more like grand approaches of people. So I'll give you a very simple example. ACT Foundation has initiated a move to reach 450,000 beneficiaries in the healthcare space, right? Now they are going to work along multiple programs who are going to contribute to that their goal of reaching 450,000. Now, in those programs are various projects that make up those programs. You see, so it's like a very straightforward and simple way of understanding what you're doing at each time. Now, the other thing that projects are something that it's a one-off. So, for instance, you're going out to feed people on the street. Okay, you plan, you buy things you want to give to them, you probably cook them, and you set out. You've completed the project, you take your pictures and all of that, right? So we're going to look at all of that when we look at when we see the log frame. But most important thing for you is to understand that project is the basic thing with a single result. Program is like an intermediary which provides an outcome. At sometimes people also believe that their programs end up in a goal, but in most cases, all programs fit into like a larger initiative. So in this next slide, we're just going to look at what I call buckets, right? It doesn't make sense for you to execute any project that you have not tested. If you are going to apply to a funder, if you're going to ask someone to support you, it always makes sense for you to first of all be able to tell someone that I this is what I have done. Okay, I have been able to achieve this, but I want to go to this extent. If you're going to like establish a borehole project in a community, for instance, and you're asking someone to support, it would make sense that you find initial, like when you start a business, it's like friends and family that fund you. And it's good for you to find an initial effort and do at least one of the boreholes. Look at the people that single borehole has helped. Then when you come out and you're telling someone that I am trying to establish borehole in 10 communities. In the first community we established this borehole, this is what happened. Okay, so being able to do that actually shows that, number one, you have a skin in the game. Number two, you actually understand what you're doing. That's why when you apply for certain funding, number one, they want to know how much you've managed in the past. Number two, they want to be able to see what you have done in the past, right? Number three, they want to see the kind of team you've used to do that in the past. So that's the reason why it's very, very important for you to not try to execute a project which you've not tested. So inception and plan, it's always basic. Those are things like inception and plan comes with the light bulb, right? I've just realized that, oh, you know what? This community, there are a lot of girls who roam the streets who end up being in one problem or the other. I think I can get them employment, right? That's the inception. Then you start planning. What should I do? What will I need? And all of that. Now, the planning, we're going to expand it in the next slide. Now, it's also very important for you to test in a very small way. Do not go full-blown on designing a program if you've not had like some kind of mini testing, right? Because those testing and in reality would help you to understand possible loopholes. Yes, it might not show you the larger challenges that would happen when you're going on a large scale, but at least you would be able to fine-tune your idea. So it's like when they make Coca-Cola or any of the big drinks, right? First of all, they make the syrup, they perfect the syrup, which means that if you take the Coke syrup from Atlanta to anywhere in the world, you can actually produce Coca-Cola and you would have the same basic feeling. That is how your program should look like. Now, why is this important? This is very important because the next question we're going to look at, it's also going to be very tricky. I'm sure a lot of us are going to pick some of the, some very interesting answers there, but maybe I'm trying to give some expo here. It's very important that your program that you design is designed for you and your organization alone in the primary sense. In the beginning, it has to be something that you have designed for you and your organization so that even if someone doesn't include money or someone doesn't give you funding tomorrow, you can grow at a certain pace. 2% growth, 5% growth. Yeah, we reached 10 people last month. This month we got to 12. You know, yes, if you get some funding, you can blow it to 1,000 in a month. But the fact that there is no funding for that project will not be a stop for it. So it's very important that you have this tested small thing that you have designed and make sure you did collect data. I'm sure that one of these is we're going to look at reporting and data collection in a very detailed way. But today we're looking at how to actually develop that winning program that would get you continuous funding and get you going. Then, of course, after the testing, you have to go to execution. Execution is critical because it is the yardstick with which the next person you're going to meet is going to measure you, right? The conversations we're going to have in the coming slides will help you understand execution and then, of course, reporting. So let's move on. Can we pull up the poll again? Can we pull up the poll again so that we can have responses for the number 2? Who is the who is not a stakeholder on this list? Sorry, but if you have friends who are unable to join us here on Zoom, it's also streaming live on YouTube, and the link is on the chat. All right, let's look at that. You have to be careful when you answer. Okay, Temitope, can you give us the total? Wow.
How you go? Can you see the poll now? I've seen it. Can you see the response?
This is
okay.
Very interesting. Yes. Okay, so we have about 73% who think that our family and friends are not principal stakeholders. Okay. So there's something that we used to say that when you start a school, for instance, there are always like the first three people, after the first three people that come to your school, you always have one would be a very good friend who is supporting whatever you do, so that you don't think that they don't support you. Right? Now, your friends and family are actually your very primary stakeholders. A whole lot of us here, you would agree with me that when you started your NGO, or when you started whatever organization you're running today, the first events you had, the people that attended were mostly your friends, your family members. So they are principal stakeholders. You cannot design a program independent of their feedback in the beginning, right? And for a lot of the products that I've worked and developed in the past, I would usually go and meet like the guy, the security guy who I know doesn't even, but I mean, he sees me every day, opens the gate, we have conversations from time to time. I mean, he's an integral part of it. And I'll be like, you know what, can you understand this? Now, your family and friends, number one, because they are not exactly part of your industry, if you're able to convince them to understand what you're trying to show, then it will be easier for you to convince somebody who has an idea, right? So let's talk stakeholder management. Now, this is a very critical part of consideration when designing your program, right? I'll still come back to the list of the individual people who you are supposed to engage, okay? Then let's talk stakeholder management. Each stakeholder has a need, okay? Now, the people you want to look at first, who are my primary beneficiaries? Those primary beneficiaries, you want to find out what is the need for them, right? What is the need for your staff? What is the need for the government around you? What is the need for the people who have been supporting you from day one? So it is very important to plan your communication. Now, as very clear with you, sorry. It's very important to plan your communication in the sense that it is not what you tell your staff about, it's not how you tell your, it's the same, but it's not how you explain the program to your staff that you explain it to a government official. It is not how you explain it to a government official that you explain it to your family and friends. It's also how you explain to your family and friends that you explain it to different funders. Okay, so for your staff, you want to be able to know how this ensure sustainability for the organ, because your staff's interests, primarily, they've come to work for you. They need to be paid. You have to show them how this program you're designing and planning will ensure that they get paid. And trust me, even when you are not there, they would miss getting us paid. Right? You also have to let your staff understand how this program will give your firm or your NGO longevity. A lot of people want some form of assurance. They want some form of confidence that, you know what, this organization is not going down in 3 years. We're not going to go away in 5 years. We're not going to go away in 10 years. So with the way you design your programs, multi-year programs, start small, be able to have a clear growth pattern for the project will let your staff understand that, you know what, this person is serious about what they're doing. And trust me, people all know process, right? Now, in also planning your communication for the government, because I think it won't sound like we went to some talking lecture. So for the government, your program needs to exhume a communication. This is your job, but I'm helping make your work easier, right? For instance, my program is going to improve, reduce hunger in this area, which are things that can make people agitate against government, right? And then there's also some small juice on top of it. If you're going to engage certain government officials, just make them part of, send them reports when they are not even listening. You know, just to do anything, you know, just to come and do the opening remarks, so that, and as long as that event, that your project is continuing to be successful, they would even be the one who start asking you, how do we move forward? Right? Now, determine the extent of you engage. Sometimes innocently, when people do not understand something, but they don't understand it, but innocently you can manage at a particular time. So set ground rules for engagement and stick to it. You know, sure that the people, all the stakeholders, you have a clear way of engaging with them. You have what you're supposed to communicate with them and what you're not supposed to communicate with them. You have a very clear process of each of them overlapping. And these rules you should not shake with if you want that sustainability, right? And then, of course, manage emotions. The fact that I use something that is very, very personal for a lot of people. The fact that a female child was molested in a community does not mean that the molestation will stop if you teach the kids taekwondo, or that the molestation will stop if you start shouting at the boys, right? You have to be very realistic. You have to manage the point of your emotions and look at the problem from a clear point of what works for this problem. And that is a very critical part of stakeholder engagement, because there's a way your emotions will fly and you speak to a government guy, you would not get the government participation. There's a way you get angry about something, and then you lash out, and then speaking to your staff, that project is not going anywhere. And there's also a way you are so emotional about. So have you wondered why sometimes you are in meetings, you are screaming about what you guys have done as an organization? You expect that, you know what, this funder should understand. They should actually be listening, like, I'm making sense. But guess what? You are really not making sense to them. Like, not like what you're saying is not valid, but at that point, you're not coming in from where it will make sense to them. I would explain this also down the line when we talk about our logical framework. Okay. Please don't forget to put down any questions or any clarifications you want in the chat box, or use the question features, right? The other very important thing in program design is understanding your processes and your timeline. And this time we're talking about responsibilities, right? Being able to select the right team, knowing who you need for a particular project is very, very critical. Okay? Now, for some projects, for some projects, you don't necessarily need to have it. So you want to look at certain available resources when developing a certain program, so that you can be able to know who you need to. So you don't overburden the program with teams. Okay, when we talk about budgets, you also you understand what I mean by when you overburden your program with teams. That means the budget for human capital of the project becomes way bigger than the impact budget, and many funders will raise eyebrows, right? Now, when setting responsibilities, understand if the responsibilities you're setting is for your universal program. Remember, I spoke about having a program that is basic, that you can tweak into different funders, right? The other thing also is that expectations, so that I will be able to assign responsibilities. Is it universal, which is that small one you created, or is it a donor-focused engagement? That means, so for instance, you're going to certain donors who you know they're very big on M&E. You tone down the number of program people and increase the number of M&E people. So in that case, when you're creating your budget, you're saying, you know what, the responsibilities I'm giving, I can use some of our M&E guys to do research responsibilities, because this particular donor does not like this. But for your own universal basic program that you've designed, it has to take that basic form. You have to have everybody who needs to do what they need to do and be able to assign them, right? Now, the other thing is also being able to assign responsibility in terms of financing the project. Know who can be responsible at every time. Do not design a program without exactly knowing who you are assigning responsibility for the finance. So in some cases, your finance is you're assigning it to your friends and family. You know that they're going to give you, right? For the other cases, you're assigning that program to money you have saved in the past. So for instance, you've been working, you've put down some money, and you have to test this. It could be your own money you're putting in. It could also be some kind of free government grant, or it could be some basic grants who are asking for ideas, right? I'm going to skip monitoring and evaluation and change risk management, because ADAPT is going to have a very, very detailed engagement around that. Okay. Outcomes, right? Mechanisms. Most times, one of the biggest challenges we have is budget. What to allocate to what? How to put our budget to who is paying for what? Now, in most pricing, so for internally, if this is the program you're just designing for as an internal initial stuff, you should probably have create some basic internal standards. Remember I talked about setting boundaries and sticking. Set internal standards. What logistics, there's going to be all kinds of things. How do you measure your logistics? Some people measure logistics in terms of the town. How much does it take to get from point A to B? And if you go out on a whole day, this is how much it's going to be. So that will help you actually come up with individual logistics budgets. Now, note that if you're tweaking projects for donors, certain donors have certain prices. It is very important for you to look at some things that they funded in the past and some things, some of them also have like breakdowns. So for instance, for some USAID programs, they will tell you that staffing cannot be more than 15%. Even at ACT, I think there's also, they help you with what percentage to break down into, right? Now, arriving at those individual stuff, you should also look at what are like internationally agreeable standards in terms of pricing. You know, it's like someone who's looking for a job and you're going to go and answer, what do you expect as salary? You don't just go and say, this is what my salary is. You probably look at, okay, what does the industry pay this? So that when you send in your proposal, what person who is looking at it will not be shocked that you're either underpricing yourself or overpricing yourself. The fact that you give a low figure doesn't mean that you're a good person or that you're a better person for the project. It probably simply means that you haven't done enough job, right? Now, I also want to quickly talk about collaborative funding when you're thinking of designing your project. I talked initially about making sure that you have clear responsibilities. If you are expecting 2 or 3 people to support your project, or if you decide your basic project with the hope that you're going to get a funder, please be very clear on what percentage you're covering and what the other funder is going to cover, right? So that percentage you're covering should be, in most cases, depending on the weight of the funder, you should be doing between 30 and 40% of your budget and asking them for the rest. Now, if you're a bigger organization and the person you're partnering with is somebody who is like, because sometimes you also have to collaborate to execute some projects. If you're in that space, then you should probably look at maybe 50-50 or 60-40, depending on who is bringing the human resource for the project, right? Now, to close, it's very important for you to sit and actually ask yourself, does this project make sense to me? Right? And that is also where your staff and your family and friends come in. That's where you do your first testing to say, in the first understanding, because it's also good to try to be objective, but most times we get carried away with the fact that we love what we've done, how much time we've put in creating this stuff, it should be nice. So it would be good to listen to maybe family and friends. There's always the one that is very objective, and of course your staff members to say, and if you have like advisory board and all of that, you want to say, what do you guys think about this before you actually try to move to implementation? All right. Thank you guys very much for your time and listening. I would look forward to the question and answer session. Are we taking questions now or we wait after the next presentation?
Yes, after the next session, we'll then take all of the questions. If you can stop sharing your screen.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the time and listening. I'll be glad to take your questions later on.
Okay, please stop sharing your screen. Okay. All right. Okay, many thanks once again, Ugochukwu, for that session. Okay, so we're not done yet. So Ugo has literally taken us through your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? What are the things that should bear in mind when you're doing it? Now we want to move a step further, which is, talking about what are you doing to make your projects, your programs, make it sustainable, to make it scalable? What are the risks that you should foresee when you're planning your interventions, and how do you even know how to to gauge all of these. And then we look at a few other factors that are important if you're going to be designing programs effectively. And to take us in the next session, we have Adafu Uche Ekpo, who is also a veteran in this business. She's got over 20 years of experience working with nonprofits. And she's an expert in nonprofit organizational development, grant writing, so she is hot cake right now. If you need assistance from her, I'm sure that after now, she'll probably be able to share her contact. Adap, who has worked, with various organizations in various industries, including agriculture, education, economic empowerment, youth development, and what have you. She has secured over $30 million, from various donors. So I tell you that she knows what she's talking about. So you'll do well to listen and take notes while she takes on the mic right now. With a clap ovation again, please let us welcome Adafu Uche Ekpo for her session. You're welcome, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I hope you can hear me okay. I had to move to a weird location because we're having internet challenges where I am. So I apologize in advance.
Yeah, let's confirm if you can hear me.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and get started. So thank you, ACT, for hosting this. And I learned a lot from the previous presenter, Ugo, and some of what he said, I will also add on to that. I'm going to focus on the importance of program design and how it connects to the survival and thriving of your organization and your ability to have an impact in the community. In the community where you're working and with the people that you are working with. I'm going to start off by telling you a story. Many years ago, a friend of mine we grew up together, and she went to university in another country, and that country ended up getting caught up in a civil war. And the experience she had from the war, after she went through, she was in a refugee camp and she was able to get out. And when we were talking, she told me, that it's really on her heart. It's really bothering her, some of the challenges that exist in that country. I'm not going to say the country because I don't think it's necessary. And so we came up with this idea that some of the issues we were seeing in that particular country, the high number of vulnerable girls, because many of the men had been killed during the war, and many people surviving that were leading households were young people, older people, particularly grandmothers, and everybody was out of school. So our idea was, we talked to a couple of school principals, and our idea was, we're going to raise money to pay school fees to keep girls in school. And part of it, we're going to link it to livelihood. So we will also pay and give microfinance loans to their mothers, their caregivers, to rebuild their livelihoods. But these loans will be conditional on these girls going to school. We thought we had met with all the stakeholders involved. Everybody agreed it was a marvelous idea. We raised money, like Ugo said, first from family and friends, and we were able to raise enough money to pay school fees for 100 girls for a full year of school, and give their caregivers, who were almost all, in fact, all women, grandmothers, aunties, and some female youth-led households. We did all this. At the end of the school year, we looked at our numbers and saw that, we had probably over 50% of the girls had done excellently well in school. Everybody was being promoted to the next class. So now we're talking about renewing the project. Then we got the worst news ever, that up to 30% of the girls were being married off that year. And we like, what do you mean? Like, these girls are not coming back to school, they're going to be married off. Why? What happened? Turns out that we didn't talk to all the stakeholders, or we didn't properly identify all the stakeholders. And so some of the older male members of the family felt that we had come into their community and changed the dynamics of their community by empowering these girls and their mothers and their aunties and their grandmothers, and we had ignored the men. So they were going to teach us a lesson and bring everybody down to size. And, it was the worst feeling ever, because almost 30 girls got married. So maybe those girls would not even have been married off if we had never been involved in this project. So please go to the next slide. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I said go on to the next slide.
Oh, okay, please hold on. Abiodun got cut off right there. Please hold on.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead. So this story is what I'm using to illustrate some of the risks that are involved and inherent in program design. We did not anticipate this particular risk of changing the dynamics of the community and actually creating a program that has actually led to harm in that community. So for us, that was one of the lessons that, let me pull up the slides on my end here so I can read off of it. Yes, so this takes me into our discussion around risk management. One of the most important things when you are designing a program is risk management. How do you anticipate and mitigate challenges? In this particular case, we didn't anticipate that our program would cause harm. We didn't anticipate that there would be a negative impact of what we were trying to do. We only saw the positive side of it. And because we didn't anticipate, we didn't mitigate by making sure we had actually captured all the stakeholders. So this one is something that I really feel strongly about, that all of us that are involved in the work that we do, we should always focus on really thinking through our program design. And for me, it's very personal, because we were so traumatized, we didn't even bother continuing this project. We were so downcast by the fact that we had caused these problems. So I always think of it as the program design math: do no harm. Your community dynamics and your program design can lead to harm, but it shouldn't lead to harm. So we have to have that in mind, that we should do no harm. The second thing that you have to consider in risk of your program design is staff turnover. And the third thing is your funding sources drying up. NGOs are not always buoyant enough to pay staff, to keep staff on board for as long as you would like them to be on board. And so the reality is that you start off, you pay your staff the best you can, but you have to design a program in such a way that if somebody leaves the organization, that does not mean that that's the end of that program. So you have to bear this, in mind, that staff turnover is something you have to think about. Another thing you have to think about is funding source. Many organizations start this process where either they're lucky and they start off with funding, a lot of funding, and they don't consider other sources on time. Or I worked in an organization where we were funded almost entirely by one major donor, and that donor was USAID. And a new president in America was elected, and that president, one of his mandates was going to change. They changed policies around how they funded through USAID. And that meant our organization went into panic mode, trying to now figure out how to diversify our funding, because if we didn't figure it out within 18 months, the entire organization, a global organization, was going to have to shut down. So when you have a funding source, it's never too early to start thinking about where else can we get funding from, to augment where we're getting, no matter how good this funding flow is, where else should we be looking? How creatively should we be thinking about expanding our funding source? So these are some of the potential risks. And when you identify those risks, you also now have to develop mitigation strategies. You have to diversify your funding. You have to cross-train your staff. And by cross-training, one of the things you learn, I think everybody should know this, but when you're in an organization, you become the jack of all trades. There's nothing like, I'm a program officer, I can't go deliver letters, I can't print letters. Everybody should do everything and should be fully aware. The only thing that I won't say everybody should be doing is the bookkeeping, because that's a specialty skill. But as much as possible, everybody should be fully aware and cross-trained. Involve beneficiaries in your planning and stay informed about policy changes. I just give you the example of how a new government completely changed how we were thinking about, or how we were going to, impacted how our funding was going to flow. Involve beneficiaries in planning. My example earlier, we did not properly identify all the stakeholders to even have the sense to involve everybody that needed to be involved in planning and making sure that this program would not cause issues in the community. Then contingency plans. How do you plan for things like what we experience with community pushing back, as well as how early is too early to think about diversifying funding? I think we all know it's never too early to think about diversifying funding, and I'll talk a little bit more about what are some of the ways to diversify funding. But in terms of the community pushback, I cannot overstate the critical element of that, especially for those of us operating in Nigeria, operating in our continent. Sometimes it's so unexpected and unanticipated, but you have to prepare for it by talking to everybody, involving everybody, and not making assumptions. Keep your biases aside when you're developing your program. Please, can we go on to the next slide? I think we can take a poll. Yes. So I don't know if you're able to do the poll set up in, yes, great.
Yeah,
so which of the perfect. So everybody can see the poll question.
Yes, everyone can see the poll questions.
Okay, can we see the results of the poll?
Right, I'm sharing now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think everybody gets it. The least effective risk management strategy is ignoring potential risk altogether. And it may seem funny, but many of us are guilty of this, of just saying, no, by the grace of God, it's going to work out. Or we're just going to say, no, we're going to push through. And also, many times we ignore risk altogether because sometimes we start projects, our passion blinds us and clouds our judgment. And we just believe that since what we're doing is so right and so justified, nothing will go wrong. And if something goes wrong, God will fix it. So even though this seems like an obvious answer, we always have to be very cautious of the fact that we could easily fall into this trap. So let's go on to the next slide. So Let's talk now about sustainability. And I'm sorry, I'm going to speak fast because I do have a hard stop in the next 15 minutes, 10 minutes. So part of program design is, like we've said earlier, thinking about diversifying funding, thinking about funding. And funding is part of what helps your organization become a sustainable organization that lasts well beyond your time. So the three ways we can think about sustainability, building an organization that is sustainability, is one, long-term funding, diversified long-term funding. Two, investing in capacity building. So that is your staff, building relationships and partnerships, and involving volunteers or stakeholders, or even the beneficiaries of the project. And then the last way to think about sustainability is monitoring and evaluation. As well as, when you do monitoring and evaluation, it is not to fulfill righteousness, it is not to check a box for the donor, it is also for you to adapt your program design based on what you're seeing. I'll go back to that first example. If we had been tracking and testing feedback the first term, at the end of the first term, at the end of the second term, maybe we would have figured out or learned that there was animosity brewing from the male elders in the community, and we would have now made changes in our program design and implementation and been more inclusive instead of just making this about the women and the girls. So it is important that when you are doing monitoring and evaluation, you have the mindset and openness to change your program design or revise elements of your program design. Doesn't mean you have to change your program from the ground up, just means that you have to be ready to adapt your program design. Investing in capacity building is easier these days than it was 10, 20 years ago. Now, this is investing in capacity building. This webinar right now is investing in capacity building. Record it, have your staff listen to it. Find online programs for your staff to participate in. Cross-train them. And as you get funding or as you become more buoyant as an organization, to have retreats, host retreats, and listen and talk to everybody, so that you make everybody feel and buy into not just the mission of the organization, but the long-term sustainability of the organization. In terms of securing long-term funding, I'll start off by saying that we have multiple sources of funding: grants, friends and family, so donations from friends and family. You can have campaigns, online campaigns, crowdfunding, you can host events. Think broadly. Social media and tech in general has democratized fundraising, in my opinion, because you can wake up and go online and leverage a platform like X, former Twitter, and tell a compelling story and generate and secure donations for your organization. So don't trap yourself into thinking that there's only one way to raise funding for your organization. Think broadly about sources, multiple sources of funding, how to leverage your network. Let me tell you another story about the importance of volunteers as it connects to fundraising. I worked for an organization once where we had a large number of volunteers, and we hosted them. We did a volunteer appreciation event. And as part of that event, I'm going around talking to people, and one particular person we connected and we planned a follow-up. And at the follow-up, that volunteer latched onto a particular program that I was talking about, and then introduced our fundraising team to a high net worth donor. And that introduction resulted in funding, significant funding to a pilot program. So what I learned from that experience is that don't make assumptions about people's capacity. Be open-minded, because this was an event where we were simply saying thank you to our volunteers. There was a low-key event, just nothing, no big deal. And in being sincere and engaging, it led to other things. So that's how you should think about your funding. Just diversified, open-minded. If you're getting funding from ACT and you get to a point where you've made progress, and even as you're talking to ACT about renewal, ask them, are there other donors that you could introduce us to? That is how you should think about diversifying fundraising. So I think we have a poll now, so that make sure that we're all on the same page and I'm not just talking. Yes.
Okay, it's coming up now.
Yeah.
Okay, it's up now.
Okay, do we have some results?
Our people on YouTube, I hope we can see this the poll also.
Do we have some results or?
Okay, I'll pull up the results now. Okay, can you see it now?
Perfect. Yes, perfect. This is the correct answer. Investing in capacity building of staff and volunteers. This also ties into what you had said earlier, which is that it is really critical to invest in your staff. It's not just about your donors are not your only beneficiaries, they'll be your main beneficiaries. It's not about the quick outcome of your program. It's also about investing in your staff and your volunteers. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. So another aspect of program design is scalability, to grow the impact of the organization. The three things you have to think about is: one, designing with scale in mind; two, building strong partnerships; and three, documenting everything. When I talk about designing with scale in mind, it also goes back to what the previous presenter had said. When you design a pilot, you design your program, and then you take it to pilot stage, you have to think about, as an organization, do you have the capacity to scale this program, whether it's in the community you are or in a larger community? The program you're designing, can it be replicated? Can you take that program from, say, Nairobi, Kenya to Mombasa? Can it be replicated in Mombasa? What are the kinds of changes they need to go through to be replicated in Mombasa? Can you develop a program in Maiduguri that can be replicated in Katsina? So it doesn't mean that the program will not be adapted for that local environment. But you have to think about the fact that when you're addressing a need in a community, chances are that need exists in other communities. So you always have to think about scale. Think big. Start small so that you capture all the mistakes and you fix them on time. But think big. Building strong partnerships. donors these days will tell you over and over again. Sometimes I've gone through this where I've submitted a proposal and donors like, this particular work you're wanting to do is something that we think XYZ organization also does and could also be a part of. So could you please go and discuss your proposal with them? So before you even get to that point with a donor, do it yourself. Reach out to other NGOs in the space you're working with, and as much as possible, see where you can collaborate. Donors really like that, and it also helps you get to scale because if you share your risks, you share your costs, and it just helps you get to scale faster than if you were doing it alone. Document everything. Many organizations think of monitoring and evaluation as an afterthought. It isn't. Write down everything that you're seeing, that you're going through in the implementation of the program so that you can do things better, so that you can adjust as you need to, and so that you can tell your story. A lot of times we fall short with telling our stories because we are not documenting everything. Take pictures at every event. Capture your lessons learned. Create training materials so that you can enable replication. I worked with a boss once that used to say, hey, this project or this thing you've done, what if you get hit by a bus? God forbid. But if you get hit by a bus, will the rest of us be able to continue? Will the rest of us be able to know where you left off of? So create materials, training materials, and program manuals. As you're developing a program, implementing the program, be creating a manual so that you can replicate it in other environments, and you can fix any issues that you have as you're going along. So I think we'll skip the next poll. Let's just go ahead and go to the final slide on evaluation, measuring success and learning.
Can you see the next slide now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So this is the final aspect of program design. I think I've talked a little bit about it. I just want to hone in on it. It is very important that you think of evaluation not as a way to say that everything was perfect, but as a way for you to show that that you actually understood the full environment where you implemented your program, and there were some learnings. The learnings could have been positive, they could have been negative, but you learned something and you have a plan to take those learnings and improve this particular program. So you need to set clear goals and objectives. What do you want your program to achieve? We all know what the SMART goals are, and these, until something else comes along, until something better comes along, it works. Set SMART goals. How many children, how many beneficiaries do you want to reach? What do you want the impact to be? How do you track it? It's not our monitoring and evaluation should not be anecdotes. It should be actual data. Have clear evaluation methods. Are you going to use surveys? Are you going to use focus groups? What the method you're going to use, does it track? Does it make sense with the population you're reaching? What's the plan, right? Then use data to inform decision making, right? So the data you collect from all of this, you should now use it to guide your program improvements and future planning. So that is how we need to be thinking about evaluation. It's not a box you check. It's not just something that you do because you were forced to write it in your grant proposal. It's something that helps you think about improving this organization, making it stronger, making it better, and making it impactful, and making sure you don't make the same mistake that people like my friend and I did, which was, doing something good that ends up backfiring or changing the community dynamics. So I think we have one more poll. Yes. So what is the primary purpose of program evaluation? Right? Can we share the answer?
All right, it's up now.
Okay. So everybody got it, or almost everybody got it. It is to identify areas for improvement. It's not just about taking credit for program success. It's partly it's to document the program success. It's to meet grant requirements, but most importantly, it's to identify areas for improvement. So, because at the end of the day, what you really want is a successful program that is having a positive impact on the community. So I'll stop there. And I think we have time for some questions. I already see some questions coming into the chat. Okay. All right. John is asking
questions.
Yes. So John is asking, what does diversifying funds mean to a nonprofit just starting off? Can I do a nonprofit program by the side? How do I get to keep track of my finances when I can't pay an accountant yet? So diversifying funding for a nonprofit starting out, in fact, I think that nonprofits starting out are actually in the best positions to diversify funding. It's the larger more mature nonprofits that actually fall into the trap of sticking with one major source of funding. So for a startup nonprofit, you can diversify your funds by writing grants. If you're not able to afford a grant writer, you will just have to do it yourself. You can take some courses online and write grants. There are grants databases that you can go to. There's some that are free. There's some that you have to pay for. If you can't afford to pay for the ones you pay for, you can use Google to search and it just takes a lot of time to find donors using Google search method as opposed to going to a grants database. So you write grants. You can use online tools to fundraise. Use your social network to fundraise. So for example, if you use an online tool like any of the crowdfunding programs, it's not just about putting your program up there. It is also about you now sharing and making sure that everybody has heard and is aware and can donate, that kind of thing. So those are two examples. Another one is you actually talking to people and trying to get support from your family and friends. In fact, that should be your first step before you even start writing a grant. So diversifying your funding means that you are starting off already with funding coming from multiple sources. So diversifying just means multiple sources. You're not just dependent on one stream of income. You're looking at multiple different ways to get funding. Another way that I have found is an effective way of getting funding is once you get funding from one person or one organization and they're happy with your work, you ask them to please open doors for you with others. So that's how you can think about diversifying funding. Can you do a non-profit program by the side? It depends. It depends on the kind of non-profit program that it is. It depends on the impact or the nature of the program that you're trying to implement. It may be possible. It also depends on the kind of job you do full time. It may be possible while you mobilize the funding to get started that you can do the pilot program as a side hustle. The best way to keep track of your finances when you're not paying an accountant is Excel. I'm sure you can find some courses online to just come up with a system for tracking how much is coming in, and then, aligning that with your bank statement. I will also say that my assumption is when you start a nonprofit, you go through the process, you register it, you get a bank account for it. The donor is not going to take you seriously if you're using your personal bank account for your nonprofit, even if it's a startup nonprofit. Nobody's going to feel comfortable transferring funds into institutional donors are not going to feel comfortable transferring money to your personal account. Your friends and family would have no problem with that. So you also have to be a credible person, because that's what many people are giving to an organization. Many times they're actually giving because they trust you. They trust you as the messenger. So I hope that answers the questions you have. Let me see what other questions. How is technology being leveraged to accelerate progress towards development goals, particularly in capacity building? How do I identify and cultivate strategic collaborations? Well, you can leverage technology to accelerate progress towards development goals by having an expansive network online. Actually, let me rephrase that. There is an online organization or network called DevX. DevX is a newsletter, it's a job board, and it gives you current events about development, ongoings. Just by being a part of that, being on DevX, whether it's their free or the paid version, you get access to webinars, you see different organizations and what they're doing. So using technology is about you making the time out to search what exists out there, what associations are there, what groups of CSOs are out there, and what are they offering, and how can I tap into that or be a part of that or participate in that. So that's how you use technology to also cultivate strategic collaborations. WhatsApp, Telegram, multiple WhatsApp groups and Telegram groups are about CSOs and sharing information, sharing funding opportunities. So it really is up to you to take those steps.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess we could just quickly look through the other questions and you can answer. Ugochukwu as well can also respond to some. So I'm looking through the questions. Yeah. I think you've answered the second one. Someone says, what is your view of having another profit-oriented business to fund the foundation, considering the effect of possible misinterpretation that NGO funds is being used for business?
Now you have to separate them. They have to be very distinct, very separate, so that there's no mix-up. So they would have to be separately registered, separate bank accounts, separate staff. And when the business is funding the work of the NGO, it's very clear and very transparent, whether it is in their annual the annual reports, or they're doing it on a quarterly basis, but it has to be very transparent. It can't be something that it is a conversation between the accountant and the executive director. Everything has to be above board so that it's not misinterpreted the other way around. So, but it's doable. It's not, in my opinion, it's not an issue. It's just that everything has to be transparent.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think Ugo can chime in here if you have additions for that, but then I'll put up this question for you as well. Like, how many initiatives and programs can you have before reaching out for grants? Maybe Ugo should go for that.
So, quick, just to add to the earlier question, as a non-profit, nothing actually stops you from doing business, right? The only thing is that the report from that business, whatever is made from that business, cannot be paid into individual accounts. So for certain international donors, they actually allow you the permission. For instance, if you're having issues with implementation and you need to extend some time, some international donors will allow you to fix the money, right? As long as it reflects in your report. Now, there's also nothing wrong in if you have the whole project money today and you have a venture that, as long as you have approval from your board and you also have approval from your funder, you are allowed to actually invest. Now, if it is money you have saved, let's say the NGO itself has some money in the bank of its own that is not project money, they are free to invest in approval from your board, right? And so that's also ways of being sustainable. I remember that Children's Developmental Center in Surulere, it's a place where they take care of kids with some physical challenges and so on. But they actually have like a bakery, you know, so they go to events, you pay them, they come to your event, they bake. So there's nothing wrong with you doing that. Where there will be issues is if you're not working together with your board, or if the profits are coming and they're not reflecting in the NGO's book. Okay. Then the other, maybe you were talking about how many
programs or initiatives can you have before reaching out for grants?
So you don't have, there's no particular number of programs. Okay. Now, reaching out for grants. So we also should understand that grants are not only from people like ACT Foundation that are making grants and so on, right? There are individuals that can give you grants. Churches do give grants. Community associations, traditional rulers do give grants. Now, the question is, how do you present what you're trying to do, right? How does it align? That comes to stakeholder management. So there's no number of programs you should reach before you get a grant. You should basically be able to ask for grants at any, I mean, there are people who even just have the idea of how to start an NGO and someone can actually give them a grant.
Okay, we have this one from our YouTube audience. What monitoring, evaluation, and learning frameworks and systems? Oh, sorry, that's not the one from YouTube. I need to take this one from YouTube and then we'll come back to Zoom. Should program evaluation be fully based on data? This person's question is coming from the point where their program reached a limited amount of people, but it really had impact on them. So this person is asking, should monitoring and evaluation be based solely on data?
Okay, I think I'm going to ask Adaptive.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Take that. Yeah.
Okay.
Is she still on?
Yes, I'm still on. The answer is I would even remove the only from that. Monitoring and evaluation is primarily based on data, but you can also have anecdotal, I guess is how you think about data. There's, hard raw data, and then there's anecdotes. So your monitoring and evaluation is stronger when it's based on hard, verifiable data. You can say, I interviewed 50 people in a focus group setting, or I interviewed 10 people in a focus group setting, and these are the questions I asked them, and these are the responses they gave. This is what we saw in the community, that kind of thing. I'll tell you another story. I was involved in evaluating a particular school feeding program when the feeding had not happened that term, and we were trying to establish whether feeding had happened at all since the program was started. While we were interviewing the cooks, some of the children ran out of the school, went home, and came back with their feeding bowls. So that already gives me an answer, and we put it in the reports. Now, that's not hard data, but that is an anecdotal data that the donor can see that, look, this thing that you funded or partially funded clearly had happened, and it had enough impact that the children recognized the cooks and saw they didn't even know anything was happening and ran back to get their plates. But I hope that answers the question.
Okay, I hope so too. I have another one here which says, how is technology being leveraged to accelerate progress towards development goals, particularly in capacity building? And then the person further says, how do I identify and cultivate strategic collaborations? Did you get that?
I think we addressed. Yeah, we already answered that. That's where even the DevEx example came from.
Okay. All right. Let me go to this one. What monitoring, evaluation, and learning frameworks and systems do we use to track progress, learn from our experiences, and adapt our strategies accordingly? I think this is one monitoring and evaluation framework that they can use to track progress.
So I think, I know Adafu can add in later. I think that for each program, usually as a smaller organization, I mean, you have to create what your framework is. That's why you have the log frame. So the log frame actually allows you know when you are succeeding and when you're not. So from your activity, if you're doing a check-in, you can first of all decide how often should I check in? 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. Are we on track? Have we, the training part, have we satisfied what our indicators are? Have we verified? Are our assumptions true? Now, if your assumptions are not true, you might now have to rethink what your outcomes can be, or maybe even change the training entirely. So most times we actually have to derive our own kind of framework. But your guide is always that thing that you have put in the beginning, which is your log frame, to say, these are the things that define my success. And how far am I from that success? You know, so most times you have to, then for some organizations that that make grants with you, they already created, so for anybody who's designing an initiative or a larger initiative that programs could fit into, there's already a monitoring and evaluation framework, which they would ask you to report into it. But for your own personal project, in most cases, it's always good for you to find what works for you, but is able to fit into other people's systems.
Okay. Mr. Dafu, would you like to add to that before I go to this next question?
Yeah, not much to add. In addition to the log frameworks, some donors will give you a template. Also, you can go online and find different templates that you can adapt to meet your needs. If a donor does not give you a template, sometimes you can make a template. It's as easy as creating a simple basic table in your proposal, or just a standalone table. But you really have to have an anchor, and that's, I think, where the log frame comes in, the theory of change comes in. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And what's the impact you're aiming for or you want to show? So there are multiple ways to do it. I can't encourage people enough to really look online. There are tools, there are so many resources that are freely available. It's just about your Google search capabilities.
All right, thank you very much. This one comes from Agnes. Says, how do I pay myself
Yeah,
and my staff, especially when
I was just
grants
looking
and
at that
sponsors
question right now.
don't want to pay for those expenses?
Yeah. Okay, so how do you pay yourself when the grants say they will not pay? So here is the thing. Every grant maker has what they pay for. And I don't think that there's anyone who makes grants who will tell you that they won't support the human resource aspect of that grant. Now, your daily work salary is different from project work, right? So, but when you're making the budget for every grant maker, it's always advisable not to list the roles of your staff, rather list the function that needs to be performed. So I take for instance, instead of writing program officer, write program coordination, right? They know that there's a human resource attached to this. Now, and instead of maybe saying, so sometimes there's always someone, so even some organizations will tell you, these are some roles that are required for this project. Now, apart from the project itself, as a non-profit, you need to be careful how you load yourself with humans, right? With people. So you could start with the basics and work with a lot of volunteers and be very upfront with your volunteers on what they are getting as volunteering for your organization. Trust me, if your organization shows high value and high potential, a lot of people are going to say we want to volunteer, but don't make them volunteer forever. And always remember, because the challenge with volunteer, when people worry about volunteering again, is that they volunteer, but they see the CEO rolling in big ways, right? So, and you're asking them to continue to volunteer. So one thing is also to be transparent, because as you ask from people, so you have to also show them. So I think for this, number one is grow at your pace. Know when to have 20, 30, 40 staff. Know when to have just one staff. And know when to ask for volunteers. There are also, because the key to this thing is minimalization, being very nimble and transformative in the way you use people. Even organizations like ACT, for instance, we have a professional volunteer program where our grantees can actually ask for us to help them do some part of their work, and we have volunteers who do that. Some other platforms also have those kind of help. So they're just a mix of ways, but the first thing is to be able to say, like, know yourself. Know if you have money for just to pay yourself, then don't hire anybody.
Okay.
Ask for help.
All right, thank you very much for that. I guess we can take this one from Wallace. Can AI be utilized in programming, inception, monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, I guess, and reporting? Can we use AI in programming? Do you advise that people use AI, in their programming?
Okay, there's something I say about technology. I mean, some people know me here, know I have a very good background in tech for development. There's something I say about technology. Technology will not fix the erosion, right? Technology is what you tell it to do that it does for you. When you say, can we use AI in developing programs? I mean, yes, there are a couple of online AI programs today that you say, design a program for me to do X, Y, Z. But guess what? You're going to be like a Google map who points you somewhere in Lagos where the street is always locked, the gate is always locked, and you get to that gate and then you have to turn around. Or it points you to a street that the name has changed before. So you when using AI for development, remember that you are engaging individuals. You only use AI for where you actually need support. It shouldn't be your mainstay. You have situations today where people will tell you, oh, you know what, just go to Google and find it. But I mean, go to Google and find it. You also have the power to decide whether to accept what Google has told you that this is what it is, to vet for it, to search whether this is real. So AI is possible, yes, it works for training, it works for you to get a design. I mean, even for building models of businesses, AI is used, but at the same time, make sure that you are in charge of the end point. So I'm sure Adak also has some things to say about
Yes, I'd like her to chime in. Yes, on it.
Yeah.
Same thing, same thing. Can you use AI to develop a program? Absolutely. But I'll go back to my first story. Is it going to tell you that the village elders are going to be angry that you're helping all the guests? Probably not. So it's a tool. It's a tool, use it. And even when it's giving you the documents, you have to sit down there, read the documents, make sure it makes sense, go and talk to people. So it's a tool. It's just one of the tools in your repertoire. But you still have to do the legwork. It's not avoidable.
Okay, thank you very much for this. Because of time, we won't be able by the facilitator, so we just go ahead. So we do not take too much of.
All right. Thank you very much, Abiodun, and thank you very much, Sue. Okay, sorry about that. I was logged for a bit. All right, thank you very much. Again, thank you very much, Adaku, and thank you very much, Igochukwu, for that interesting conversation. I'm very sure everyone enjoyed the session. Please, can you give a thumbs up to our speakers in the chat room? Please give them a thumbs up. Give them your best emoji. Please, can you give your best emoji in the chat room? All right, thank you very much once again, Adaku, and we appreciate the time spent. For those who we could not answer the questions, please, you can always go back to, I'm very sure in some of the presentations, the answers to your question are in some of the presentations. So it would be good for you to go back again and listen. Remember, Adaku said to share with your colleagues, share with your co-workers. So the video is available on YouTube. It's available on YouTube. Please, you can go back to our YouTube to replay the session, to listen and listen. Remember, when you listen and listen again, it sticks better. So thank you very much to our esteemed guests. We appreciate you. All right. We would like to take pictures right now. These were, we would like to see your lovely faces, take pictures. Please, can you switch on your camera? You need to put on some powder. Please put on some powder. You need to put on some. All right. I'm waiting for our videos to come on. Okay. Also, please note that as you log out of this session, a survey will pop up. Please, would like you to ensure that you answer the survey. It's very, very important that you answer the survey. It helps us to know where to improve, what we can make better. What topics would you like us to showcase in our next training? So please kindly ensure the survey, as soon as you log out, the survey will come up. Please kindly ensure that you answer the survey. All right. So our videos are on. So I'll just take a screenshot. Right. Okay. Just give me a moment, please. Okay. All right, thank you. I've taken a screenshot for putting on videos. We've come to the end of the session. I want over to Abiodun to take the final closing. Also share the slide if you can.
Thank
We'll
you
try
very
and share the
much,
slide.
On behalf of the board and management of Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation, I want to say a very big thank you to you for making out time to be here to attend our training, and to our very seasoned experts who have spoken today. I'm sure that we have learned a lot. We want to say a very big thank you to Ugochukwu Nwosu and to Adaku Uche Epo. Given your busy schedule, you still made out time to be here with us to come and share in your wealth of experience. And yes, to our YouTube
linking on
audience,
YouTube
this is
during
the first time
a
we're
live
actually
program like
linking
this.
on YouTube
We want
during
to
a
thank
live
you
program
so
like
much
this.
for
We want to
turning
thank
up
you
for us,
so
and we
much for
hope
turning up
that
for
as
us, and
much
we
as
hope
we have gained
that
here,
as
you have
much as we have
also
gained here,
gained
you have
as
also gained
well.
as well.
All right.
All right,
So
so like Temitope
I
mentioned,
mentioned, the presentation is available on
It was streamed live, so it will be available on
YouTube.
YouTube, Aspire Coronation Trust
Foundation
Foundation on
and you
YouTube,
will
and
see
you
it.
will see
Until we
it.
come your way
Until we come your way next
stay in
time,
touch
please
with
stay
us.
in
We'll
touch. Have yet another interesting training session in the month of May, so do ensure to
training
follow
session
us.
this month of
Until then, have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye.
Compassion may be the milk of charity, but a well-articulated vision and organization are the indices that guarantee effectiveness. Aspire Coronation Trust ACT Foundation is a grant-making non-profit organization established 16 to support local, national, and regional non-profit organizations working to address challenges and associated vulnerabilities across the African continent. Our work, factored from the SDGs formulated for global best practices, ensure that we can affect our societies in ways that ensure a cascade of knowledge, interest, and development long after we are gone. This we are doing by fostering ownership as we drive sustainable impact within our community.